Hey guys, so before we continue on any of our development efforts further, I just want to point out that especially on larger projects, or even let's say mid to or semi-large projects or anything along those lines, let's say even if you were creating a website, we rarely write our CSS in CSS files. And that's primarily because of the limitations of CSS files. Again, how they're really hard to organize. If you can't really do imports. Obviously, they have like capacity. They have introduced the capability of introducing, let's say, CSS variables in them, but it's still very limited. So one alternative that you have for writing CSS, and it's one of the most common ways of writing CSS, is using Sass. So Sass is just CSS with superpowers, as it's written here. It's just like a really great way of organizing, writing, managing your CSS files. So how does it work? And I'm gonna definitely go into really great things about some of the superpowers of Sass, and you can go through them yourself as well. But let's just get started with Sass. So how do you actually get started? Well, first of all, you have to do an npm install and global Sass. Like I already have Sass installed, as I can check with Sass -v. So it says, okay, it gives me information about Sass, and that's all great. But if you don't have it installed, you have to install it doing this. But that also requires using npm. So you first have to check whether npm is installed on your system. If it is, and if it returns a version, then you're good to go. You can install this. But if, for example, let's say you don't have it, then what you need to do here is you need to go to the node file, to the node website, node.js website, and you need to go to the download section, and you need to basically install any of the installers that work for you. Once you've done that and you do npm -v and it returns a version, that means that it's installed. Then you can go ahead and you can install Sass by doing this. So I already have it installed. So I'm just going to go in my root folder. I'm going to create an scss folder. I'm going to create a styles.scss file. And I can then just start writing scss. So for example, if I write like body and then display none, and then if I go to my page, you can see nothing works. I am refreshing. Obviously, it's not working. Well, that's because you haven't really compiled your scss file into a CSS file. So in order to do that, you have to go to the next step, which is again, learn scss or something along those lines. So in order to do that, you basically have to do something like this, where you do something like this, and you have to define where your scss file is. So currently our scss file is in the scss folder, and the name of the file is styles.scss. And I want to say I want to output that file in a CSS folder, and I just want to name it the same, styles.css. So now if I press enter, you can see it's saying, okay, the CSS file is compiled. And now if I go to my learn CSS properties thing, you can see that it's hidden. So if I go to my CSS file now, you can see it's fetching the correct code, and that works. So now, for example, I can do a lot of different things with this. I can do an import, and I can say I want to import a file in the partials folder, and let's say the file name is going to be variables. So if I do that, you can see it says we can't really find this file. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go to my scss folder. I'm going to create a folder inside of it. I'm going to name it partials. And then I'm going to create a file starting with an underscore. That defines that this file is just for inclusion. It's a file that needs to be imported. It's not necessarily the main scss file. So I create that, and now you can see the error automatically disappeared. Now, for example, I can define a variable in this file, and I can say the variable is blue. A primary, I've defined, this is the name of the variable. That's how you define the variable, by starting it with a $sign, and then you can give it any value you want. So now that you've done this, I can go and I can say the body, the color of anything that exists in my body is going to be primary. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to add a semicolon here to say that this particular line is complete, and I'm going to save, and as you can see, everything is now blue. So that works perfectly. There are other things that you can do. For example, I can create an icon file as an example. Obviously I don't have that icon file, and it gives me that error, but I can basically duplicate this variables file. I can change the name and I can say icons, and now I have the icons file created. I'm just going to change the name to icons here, and now you can see the error has disappeared. Now there are a lot of powerful things that you can do here. You can have functions, you can have operators in here, you can have these values, and you can have a lot of different things, a lot of flexibility. You can also have flow control. So imagine you have, I'm just going to give like one example. So imagine you want to create like icons of multiple sizes. So you want to have like a 24 pixel size, you can have a 32 pixel size, you can have a 40 pixel size, and then you can have a 64 pixel size, so on and so forth. So imagine I do this, and I'm going to say I want to loop over each size, each value in this sizes array, and just create this based on the size that exists here. So first of all, the size is going to be 24 pixel. After that, it's going to be 32 pixels, so on and so forth. Now let's just see what happens in our CSS file. So you can see that it has automatically generated these icon minus 24 pixel class, icon minus 32 pixel class, and all of these just by this small each loop. And that's just like one of the really powerful ways Sass can really help your workflow. You can have variables, you can organize your files in separate files, you can have a header file, a footer file, you can have mixins and all of that. We're going to get into mixin functions, loops as we go through the project. You don't necessarily need them all the time, but the main things that you do need when you're doing CSS is you basically have the flexibility of separating your files into multiple files, just segregating them out and then compiling them into a single styles.scss file, which is then going to be generated into a CSS file. And then there's also the ability for you to nest your properties. So imagine you have a nav element, and I'm just gonna, you have a nav element and then you have a UL inside. Previously in CSS you used to do a nav UL nav and then space UL to target the nav and UL. Now you can easily do just nav and then have the rule nested inside of the larger rule, and then similarly you can just do li and have something like this. So that's basically going to mean a nav, and then it has a UL inside and it has li inside. Now if I had to do that with CSS, it would be something like this, which takes a lot of time. Here I can just create the li rule. Here I have to write the whole thing over and over again, and you can imagine how complicated it can be if, for example, you have really long class names. So if you want to say header wrapper, and then I have a header minus icon inside of it, and then I have a link inside of that, so it's like really hard to write. Whereas if it was just, let's say you wanted a head, like you can easily, it's just like really easy. Like once you get a hang of it, you'll understand what I mean by that. So that's like one thing that I really recommend before you even start doing anything. And we're going to be continuing where we are from here, and I'm going to take it slightly. I'm gonna showcase like how we can use the styles.scss file in combination with the Tailwind file, and we're gonna create the dribble page a bit more aesthetically pleasing now. And just stick with me, and let's just do it. Take care. And again, like if there's any questions, any concerns, anything you don't understand, anything you would like me to highlight a bit more, feel free to reach out in the comments, and I'll try my best to reply there. Thanks.